Hello everybody, welcome back to our HTML and CSS tutorial. In the previous episode, we have discussed how to add a 5 icon inside a website, and in today's episode, we are going to learn how to create a drop-down menu. And this will be the drop-down menu we are going to be creating for today's episode. As you can see, this is just a basic navbar I have created right here, and when we hover around the services, our drop-down will appear, and when we take away our cursor like this, it will disappear, just like this. This is the drop-down we're going to be creating for today. So let's go back and start writing the HTML code for our drop-down. First of all, let's start with creating a nav tag like this, and let's give a class to our nav tag, and let's call the class of this nav tag something like navbar like this. And let's come down and create a UL tag on other list like this. And let's come down again and let's create a list item like this, and let's also create a link like that is an anchor tag like this, and let's just leave this link to this page with a hashtag like this, and let's give the text like home right here. Let's just copy what we did here with Ctrl+C, and let's come down and paste it 1 2 3 like this. And let's just change this one to something like about, and this one let's change it to services like this, and for this one let's make it contact like this. And let's just come right here like this, and let's give a class to this one, and let's call the class that we're going to give this one to something like drop-down, since we're going to be creating our drop-down under this list item. And the next thing is, let's come right here and create a div tag like this, and let's also give class to this div tag, and let's call the class of this div tag something like, let's just give it something like maybe drop-down content, since they're the content of our drop-down dash content like this. And let's also create links for our drop-down content, so let's create an anchor tag like this, and let's also just leave these links to this page with a hashtag like this, and let's just give it some text of, let's say, service 1 like this. And let's just copy what we did here with Ctrl+C, and let's come down and paste it 1 2 like this, and let's change this one to service 2 and this one to service 3 like this. And I think we are done with the drop down HTML code, so let's just save it with Ctrl+S and go back inside our browser. Let's close this tab right now and refresh. As you can see, our HTML code has appeared. So now the next thing is to style it. Let's go back inside our CSS and start styling. Let's start with styling our body tag like this, and the first thing we are going to change for our body is the font family like this. And for the font family, let's give it Arial, or let's just give it two font family, Arial, and let's add sans serif like this. And what we did here is that, let's assume your browser doesn't support Arial font family, then it will just apply the sans serif font family. Instead of just applying the default font family of that browser, it will just go with the sans serif font family. And the next thing is to remove our margin. Let's remove it with 0, and for our padding, let's also remove it with 0 like this. And we are done with the body tag. And the next thing we are going to style is the class navbar we have created. And for this class, let's change the background color of our navbar to something like this, something dark like this. And let's also add some padding to our navbar on the top and bottom. Let's give it something like 15 pixel, and let's remove it for the left and right like this. and we are done with our navbar. The next thing is our unordered list. UL like this. Let's style it, and for our unordered list, let's remove the list style like this. Let's make it to none like this. And for the margin, let's also remove the margin, and the padding, let's also remove it with 0. And for the display of our unordered list, let's just give it flex like this, flex. And the next thing is our list item. And for our list item, I think the only thing we need to add for it is, let's just give it a margin right like this. For the margin right, I think let's give it something like 20 pixel like this, and that's all. Let's scroll down a little bit like this, and let's style our anchor tag. For the anchor tags, let's remove its text decoration, and let's remove it with none like this. And let's also change its color. Since our background is dark, the color is not supposed to be black, because now if you were to save it like this, go back inside our browser and refresh, as you can see, the color is just the default color, little very dark, we can't see anything. So let's change the color to white, something like this, FFF. And the next thing, let's also add a font weight to make it very bold, or let's just give it bold like this. And the next thing is also the font size. Let's change the font size to something like 16 pixel. I think 16 pixel is okay. And for the transition, since we're going to add a hover to it, let's also give it a transition. And for the transition, let's just change the color transition to something like 0.3 second. Let's make it ease like this. And I think we are done with the anchor tag. Or let's just add a hover to it like this. And for its hover, let's just change the color to something like this. Let me just copy a color. Let's paste it like this. It's a little yellowish. If you don't want it, you can change it. You just need to hover around your color like this and use this color picker and change something, whatever you want. Let's just leave it to something like this. I think this is okay. Let's leave it like this. You can select whatever color you want, since it is just a hover. And the next thing we need to style is our drop down. Our drop down items. Drop down like this. We have already created a class drop down, so we are styling it now. And the position of our drop down, let's make it a relative position like this. And I think that's all we are going to be adding for our drop down. Let's just scroll a bit like this, and let's style our drop down content. Drop down dash content. Sorry, our drop down is a class, so we need to target it with a dot like this. Drop down content like this. And let's remove it display for now, since we don't want it to always appear. We only want it to appear when we hover around our services. So let's remove it display to none like this. Let's make it hidden. And for its position, let's make it position something like absolute like this. And let's change also its background color to match with the background color of our navbar. So for the background color, let's also give it this one like this, and let's give it a box shadow. Sorry, a box shadow like this. And for its box shadow, let's go with, let me just copy a color like this, and the color is an RGB color. Let's just paste it right here like this. And what we just did is that we remove the box shadow at the top, and for the left or right we'd give it 8 pixel, and for the bottom the shadow will be 16 pixel, and the color is RGB like this. So the next thing we need is our drop down hover. So let's target it with this drop down like this, and since we are targeting its hover, let's go with hover like this, and we are targeting our drop down content because we have already made their display none right here. So what we are going to be doing here is that we want them to appear on hover like this. So let's target them, and let's just make the display to block like this. That is, when we hover around it, the display will be blocked, but if you are not hovering around it, the display will be none. That's just what we did. So the next thing we need to style is our drop down content links like this. So let's target it, drop down content, and we're styling our anchor tag, the anchor tags inside our drop down like this. Let's just change their color to something like this, something white, since we've already made the background to something dark like this. And let's give it some padding. For the top and bottom, let's give it 12 pixel, and for the left or right, let's give it something like 16 pixel, maybe 16 pixel will be okay like this. And for their display, let's make it a block display like this, and let's just scroll a bit like this. The next thing I think is our drop down content anchor tag hover like this. So drop down content, we're targeting its anchor tag, and the anchor tag we're styling it hover like this. And the only thing we need is a background color for our hover. Let's give the background color of this hover something like this. Let's just go with this, a little bit less darker than the normal background of our navbar. So I think we are done with the styling also. So let's just save it with Ctrl S and go back inside our browser and refresh. As you can see right now, if we are to come over this one and hover around it, our drop down will appear like this. This is how you create a drop down menu, and you can just change the color of this hover because it's showing something very dark like this. Let's just go and change it to, instead of this one, let's just change it to something a little bit lighter like this, something like this. I think this one will be okay. Let's just save it with Ctrl S, go back inside the browser, I refresh, and it's still dark, but this one is much better. You can change it to whatever you want since the color picker is there, and there's a lot of different colors. I just prefer going with this one. And I think this is all for today. This is how you create a drop down menu, and this will be the end of today's lesson. I hope you guys enjoy. See you in the next one.